talking about pushing people around, let's. I'd like to talk to you about the Jiu-Jitsu training, and we said a little bit earlier that you are training military and law enforcement. When you're training law enforcement officers, is that different from the training that you're giving in, say the regular Jiu-Jitsu classes? Is there special training that you're giving the officers?
Yes and no. Both of them, I'm teaching them confidence so they can defend themselves against any kind of aggression. Um, Law enforcement, they have to protect themselves, protect their guns, because a normal civilian don't walk around with a gun. So the officer have to protect how they cannot lose their gun on the battle. You see, when they are arresting somebody. So that's the only difference. Same thing with the army. First time I went down to um, I went to Fort Benning to teach the Army Rangers, and at the time it was Colonel McChrystal. Colonel McChrystal looked at me and was like, "My soldiers will never use this." So I was like, "Okay, without the respect, sir. So why'd you hire me?" He's like, "I want you to build their confidence that they can drop down all their toys and go across any field and defend themselves against somebody." Fair enough, I can do that.
When you subdue somebody, um, I'm assuming it's a different tactic when you're in, a match on a mat versus whether you're a police officer and, a suspect or I guess a criminal. Um, are you teaching, are you teaching them, to do this safely? There's been a few instances where, you see the guys have, a knee on the neck, or they're, maybe not, subduing these people properly. Uh, is that something you're teaching? Is how to do that safely so that not only, are they able to subdue that criminal, but to keep the officer and the criminal safe? Is that something you're teaching?
That's the idea of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's like on the first UFC, people laugh. But my father, first UFC was no time limit, no weight division, no rules, no gloves, everything goes. And my father was like, "Son, do not beat up your opponents." I was like, "But father, it's a fight, dad. It's a fight, dad. They're gonna be trying to rip my head off." They're like, "Don't worry. Do not get hit by them, but do not hit them. Subdue them nicely. Show the technique of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu." And that was what impressed everybody on the first UFC. It was the technique. And people says all the time, "Well, I start training martial arts, I start training jiu-jitsu because I saw you fighting." I tell them, "You never saw me fighting. You saw the technique. That's what impressed you." And they go, "Oh, that's true. This is right. It's like I saw this the technique that impressed the people." So it wasn't the the fighting, because I didn't really fight. I didn't beat up my opponents. I subdue larger, bigger opponents, champions of their styles, without hurting them. Even they were impressed.
Thanks for hurting me. And as we know, right, being former law enforcement, I try to tell people, you know, you can have all the tools, all the technique, and sometimes, as Royce can tell you, in the fight, in a real dynamic situation, it changes very fast. And even the best well trained, sometimes it turns into a situation where it becomes lethal. And I know that Royce is familiar with the LVNR, or the carotid restraint technique, which actually Royce uses very well. He actually put me to sleep one time. You were supposed to come in studio, put me to sleep. That was going to happen today, but lucky for you, it didn't happen.
I'll do a
So
shot show.
I'll do it at SHOT Show.
You can walk me through it. Like
Yeah, he'll do it at SHOT Show. And I don't know if you want to get into this or talk about this, but people call it the chokehold, but it was really the vascular neck restraint, or the carotid restraint technique. And these were instruments and things we'd actually use on the street to subdue somebody. Good or bad or indifferent, it was a police tool that was used out there and used effectively. And I don't know how deep you want to get into it. There's a lot of controversy about it. There's a lot of medical knowledge about it, whether it works, how it works, and how lethal it is. But I can tell you, I know in this given day throughout the U.S., how many people have been the rear naked choke, the carotid, to this day, and nobody dies from it. Can you maybe go into that a little bit of what you think of the tool is, or what you think about it in law enforcement use, and should it be used? If you want to talk about
What
it.
what happened is no officer wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, today I'm going to go choke somebody out.
Yep.
Today I'm going to go shoot somebody. But if they have to use, you see, if they have to use, they better know how to do it.
100%.
I think the issue with some of these techniques that we're taught is nobody can prejudge what chemicals have been put into the body before the engagement. You can't, you can't predict what other natural physical, problems that person has. So they end up in a fight to the death, and and they don't know what they can and can't do, what impact it's going to have. You have to do what you're trained with, and I think that's really where our litigious society has really stabbed us in the back.
Yeah, I could just tell you from a little bit of personal experience, and I guess where I'm going with this, and I want people to understand, I have used the vascular neck restraint technique, the carotid or whatever, when the situation got so dynamic that I could have either drawn my weapon and shot that person or used a vascular neck technique, and that person didn't die, wasn't hurt, and was restrained, and I was able to go home. My weapon never came out of the holster. And I think certain techniques, when you realize, man, should I attempt to draw my gun in this situation or use a vascular neck technique that subdued him or her in a manner that they were able to go home? I never drew my weapon, I didn't kill them. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the public. If I'm justified to use a sense of lethal force because all else has failed, verbal has failed, commands have failed, hands-on technique, electronic control device, or whatever else, or a baton has failed, do you really want me to level up and shoot somebody? Or maybe that vascular neck technique might actually save his life and my life, and no one had to get shot. And I think that, and we discussed that many, many years ago, that sometimes that might be the bridge. I didn't have to pull my weapon out and shoot. I simply was able to subdue that person. But I don't know if you want to discuss that any further on that.
You explained perfectly. Are you a black belt?
Well, Royce, I don't like to brag, but I once trained with this amazing individual. I think you once told me I showed you things you had never seen before. I think something like that, because I went out so fast. I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think George's technique it works on anybody that's under 5'6".
Yes.
Is that right, George?
5'5". Listen, I tell you guys all the time, I am average height in San Antonio. In South San Antonio, I am average height. You guys are horrible. No, hey, but seriously, when you were going to be on this show today, I was hoping that you'd be in studio to put me to sleep, but he is going to be at SHOT Show, and he's offered to put me to sleep there at SHOT Show.
I'll see your SHOT Show. Don't worry, I won't forget.
We won't forget that either.
Hoist, for a moment, touch on the technique that everybody should know, and that is forcing your opponent to work harder than you do, because a lot of people, when the adrenaline hits and all that, they become offensive to the point of exhaustion. And I know part of your style is relaxation and let that other person exhaust themselves while you're preventing either from getting hurt.
The style is not exactly relaxation. You can't relax if you don't know what you're doing. So it's knowledge. You got to know what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing, it's easy. So Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is not an offensive style, it's a defensive style. If I don't lose the fight, the question is how I'm going to win now. So, but first thing is not to lose. If I don't lose, the question is how I'm going to win. So if I know how to defend myself, and there's no way the opponent can beat me, the question is how I'm going to subdue him or her.
How many departments or states are you using the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu method to train police officers? And is there a national push for this? Or?
I never stopped to count, but I travel about 7-8 months of the year.
Wow.
Different schools, different departments, Army, law enforcement, private schools.
It seems that this would benefit everybody. Is there a talk about making this a standard or a national push for this for training for all law enforcement?
Not yet, but we should start.
I think
I
that's
think every law enforcement should learn, not because they're gonna use, but will give them confidence to be able to talk to the suspect, and the suspects notice when the officer have confidence and when the officer doesn't have the confidence.
100%. I was very fortunate enough to be at my training academy for about 5 years in San Antonio, and I can tell you that we preach that all the time. That confidence not in just your gun, not in just your less lethal weapons, but in your knowledge, in your physicality. If you have that confidence, everybody on the street, they see it, and that's a great point. And I think everyone should still train. I still do train, and I think it just brings that confidence, especially for young officers out there. If you're not just lifting weights, but get out there and train, because I say this all the time, right? When the fight happens, when it happens, and in law enforcement, you will get in an altercation. Nobody asks you how many burpees you can do when the fight starts. They don't ask you about what's your time in the mile, right? It is, can you take me to the ground? Can you take me to jail? So to all my CrossFit junkies, all my people who are working out constantly, all praise to you. Keep it up, but also have some time to train in some combatives. Because I'm telling you, man, I always tell you, no one asks you how many push-ups you can do when the fight starts.
Well, I think I just have one last question for you myself. Who do you think will be the next UFC champion?
Oh, that's a tough one to answer, because it's not. Sometimes the guy have all the techniques but don't have discipline. Sometimes the guys just lacks a lot on discipline. So
Do you have a
it's not
favorite
because
right
he's
now?
good. I like to watch the champions
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they know what it takes to become a champion. It's a lot of discipline involved.
What are 3 things that you think every young man should do, to be stronger, more powerful, and more disciplined,
And more confident.
and more confident?
Train Jiu-Jitsu, of course.
Okay.
You have to know how to hunt and swim.
Hunt and swim.
Hunt and swim. All right. I love that. I love
You can
that.
defend yourself, you can fight, you can hunt to provide, and you know how to swim.
And you can eat. Yeah, I love that.
that's
All right.
good.
That's
That's good.
fantastic.
Especially in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. Royce, I just wanted to say thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I think it's amazing. Thanks for giving us some insight. And I want to tell you this. Thanks for being, because we talk about mentorship before on this show. And I want to tell you, you have been a voice and a mentor to a lot of these young men and women. But I mainly speak about men because we're all men. And I think it's so important in this day and age where it's kind of a beat down a little bit on young men not to be men. And I think you're setting that example, not just in your younger years, but man, even more so, you have a broader outreach. Now people get to know the backstory of what all this took to get there. And I think your journey is just as important as the success you've had, and continue to do things like that. I just so proud of what you're doing for the young people in this world. I mean that worldwide, and just keep it up, man. I'm very, very proud to say that I know you, and thanks for coming.
Thank you. And I'll see a shot show for sure.
Yeah, and my wife's going to be there, so don't hurt me.
I would also say, Royce, thank you. Thanks to your father.
Yeah,
Your father taught you what it meant to be what you are, and now you're mentoring others, and that's, I think, what this country actually should be about.
100%.
That's what I tell people. I'm a product of my father's work.
That's a brilliant saying and something people should take to heart.
That's good advice for all the fathers out there right now.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Royce, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Looking forward.
Thank you, guys.
Looking forward to watching you choke George out at SHOT Show. So we'll see.
Don't miss a shot show.
Yeah, we'll see you in January.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Royce.
Bye. Take care.